He built a legacy on the golf course for over 3 decades, 6 major championships, a reputation as one of the most beloved and most controversial figures the sport has ever seen. But nothing, not a single moment in 30 years of professional golf, prepared Phil Mickelson for the storm that was reportedly waiting for him at home, because at 55 years old, the man they called Lefty, the smiling face fans lined up for hours just to see, was allegedly forced out of his own private golf club by the one person who has known every version of him, his wife of nearly 30 years, Amy Mickelson. So what actually happened behind those closed doors? According to a bombshell report from veteran golf journalist Alan Shipnuck, published on Scratch, Phil Mickelson quietly left the exclusive Madison Club in La Quinta, California, all the way back in 2021. And for years, the real reason behind that departure stayed hidden from the public eye. But now, insiders close to the club are finally talking, and what they're describing is not a simple membership change or a quiet retirement from one golf community to another. It's being described, in their own words, as a demand. A senior member of the Madison Club's management team told Shipnuck directly, quote, "It was more of a demand by Amy." And according to the report, Phil's and Amy's own wealth management firm placed a call to the club that left staff stunned, reportedly saying, "We need Phil's place sold, gone, right now. Phil will no longer be a member." Sit with that for a second. This wasn't a slow fade. This wasn't a mutual, amicable exit dressed up for the press. This was urgent. This was final. This was, according to insiders, a wife pulling the plug on her husband's second home in an instant, and multiple sources inside the club claim they know exactly why it happened. Mickelson reportedly owned a condo on the second story of the clubhouse, described by insiders as having, quote, bachelor pad vibes. And according to the same report, members allege that Mickelson would hand his phone off to club employees and even to fellow members before slipping away for what sources describe only as secret rendezvous. One member reportedly told Shipnuck, quote, "Everyone at the club knew what was going on, and eventually Amy found out too." Let that sink in for a moment. If these accounts are accurate, the people around Phil Mickelson, the members, the staff, the people who saw him every single day on that course, allegedly knew something was happening long before his own wife did. And when she found out, according to these reports, the fallout was swift, and it was merciless. But here's where the story gets even more layered, because this wasn't the first time Mickelson's life off the course had made headlines for reasons that had nothing to do with golf. Rewind to 2023. Phil Mickelson stood in front of the world and admitted something almost no top athlete ever admits publicly: a gambling addiction so severe, by his own account, that it nearly destroyed everything he had built. And in that same raw, public confession, he credited exactly one person for helping him survive it. Not his coach, not his sponsors, not his fellow pros. Amy. He wrote that her love and her commitment helped him become, quote, "the person I want to be." So here's the question that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. How does a marriage survive a gambling addiction severe enough to require a public confession? How does it survive nearly 3 decades under the single most brutal spotlight in professional sports? How does it survive a wife who once battled breast cancer while raising 3 young children largely alone during the biggest weeks of her husband's career? And then, after surviving all of that, how does it reportedly nearly collapse over allegations tied to a private golf club and a second-story condo? Because make no mistake about it, this is a woman who has walked through fire with Phil Mickelson before, more than once. Rewind even further, to 2003. Amy Mickelson goes into labor with their 3rd child, a son named Evan. What should have been a routine, joyful delivery turned into a nightmare no family should ever have to face. Evan didn't breathe for a full 7 minutes after birth. Doctors later revealed that without emergency resuscitation equipment already in the room, ready and waiting, he could have suffered permanent, severe brain damage. But it gets worse, because Amy herself was reportedly 2 to 3 minutes away from dying that same day. A 6-inch tear tore open in a major artery. An emergency radiologist rushed in at the last possible second and performed a procedure that ultimately saved her life. Phil Mickelson has said publicly, more than once, that day put golf into perspective forever, that no major championship, No trophy, no green jacket could ever compare to nearly losing his wife and newborn son in the same terrifying hour. And now, more than 2 decades later, the same woman who survived that night, who stood beside him through 6 major championship victories, through his controversial and career-altering jump to live golf, through a public gambling confession that could have ended his marriage entirely, is reportedly the one who drew the hardest line yet, cutting him off from a place he called a second home. So what does this actually mean for Phil Mickelson's marriage right now, in 2026? Because here's what almost nobody is connecting together. Starting in February of this year, Mickelson posted on social media that he would miss the first 2 LIV golf events of the season, writing that he and Amy, quote, need to be present for a family health matter. No further details. Then in April, just days before the Masters, a tournament he has played nearly every single year since his debut in 1993, missing it only once in over 3 decades, Mickelson pulled out entirely, writing that he would be, quote, out for an extended period of time as my family continues to navigate a personal health matter. Weeks later in May, he withdrew from the PGA Championship for the exact same reason, with tournament organizers confirming only that it was, quote, a personal health matter with his family. When a golf media account reached out directly for comment, Mickelson's answer was short, honest, and unguarded. He said, quote, I wish I could. I can't, unfortunately. I'm hoping to play the rest of the year after that, but I honestly don't know. Read that again. One of the most competitive major champions in the history of the sport, a man who has played through injuries, through penalties, through public humiliation, saying he honestly doesn't know if he'll play again this year. That is not the language of a minor scheduling conflict. That is the language of a family in crisis. And here's where the timeline becomes almost impossible to ignore. Because it was in June of 2026, right in the middle of this unexplained health crisis, that the Shipnuck report detailing the alleged Madison Club situation, the alleged affairs, and separate allegations reported by Golf Digest, that Mickelson was also removed from the Farms Golf Club near San Diego over accusations of unwanted physical contact with a female employee, all became public at nearly the exact same time. 2 massive separate storms, reportedly hitting the Mickelson family in the same handful of months. One, a private health matter serious enough to pull a legendary competitor off the course entirely for the better part of a year, and the other a set of allegations serious enough to reportedly get him quietly expelled from not 1, but 2 private clubs. Coincidence? Maybe, but golf insiders, and frankly anyone paying close attention, aren't so sure. When you line all of this up side by side, the abrupt club departure back in 2021, the alleged affairs, the 2023 gambling collapse he publicly admitted to, the unexplained family health matter dominating his entire 2026 season, and now these fresh allegations resurfacing years later at the worst possible time, a picture starts to form, and it is not a flattering one for golf's aging superstar. But before you rush to any final judgment, remember this. None of these allegations have been directly confirmed by either Phil or Amy Mickelson themselves, both of whom have largely declined to address the specifics publicly, and golf insiders have been known, plenty of times before, to exaggerate, speculate, and chase headlines just like anyone else in this business. So we have to ask ourselves the real question here. Are we watching the private unraveling of one of golf's most enduring and most talked about love stories play out in real time, piece by piece, report by report? Or is this simply the golf world doing what it always does with its biggest, most legendary stars, turning private pain, private illness, and private struggle into public spectacle for clicks and views? What we do know for certain, based on everything reported so far, is this. Amy Mickelson is not a woman who has ever stayed silent when something was wrong. She proved that during a life-threatening childbirth in 2003. She proved it again standing beside her husband through his darkest public confession in 2023. And if these newer reports are accurate, she proved it once more, in the most public way imaginable, reportedly forcing her husband out of a place he called home. So here's what I genuinely want to know from you watching this right now. Do you think Phil and Amy Mickelson's marriage survives this, the same way it has survived a near-fatal childbirth, a public gambling addiction, and nearly 3 decades in professional sports' harshest spotlight? Or has golf's golden couple, the pair everyone assumed was unshakable, finally reached the point of no return? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below right now because this story is still developing and there is a very real chance more details come out in the coming weeks as Mickelson's own future in the sport hangs in the balance. If you want to stay ahead of every single twist in this story before anyone else covers it, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to see just how deep this really goes. Because the golf world is still trying to process what may have just happened behind the scenes of one of its most iconic marriages. And honestly, so are we.